All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the California Department of Veterans Affairs and the California Transition Assistance Program, we'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Emergency Preparedness, Part 1. My name is Derek Rose, and I serve as a training coordinator for the California Transition Assistance Program. We just want to say thank you again for joining us today and giving us some of your time to bring you this valuable information. So before we get started, I just want to go over some general housekeeping items for the day. As far as the flow of the presentation, we do ask that if you are not a panelist or a presenter to just keep your microphones muted and your cameras turned off. This just helps eliminate some of the bandwidth and minimize distractions for the rest of the group. As far as the agenda goes for this morning, we are going to begin with just kind of an overview of the CalTAP program, exactly what it is and what are the services and benefits that are offered through the Transition Assistance Program, as well as a brief overview of some of the California specific veterans benefits that are offered here in the state to veterans as well as family members. And then we are going to have our local interagency network coordinator, Merlene, speak. And then we're going to turn it over to our main presenters for the morning, Mr. Nick Murray with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services and Cal OES, and Joseph Johnson with the VA Northern California Emergency Management team. So we have a lot of information to bring you. So we're really excited for your partnership, and thank you for joining us today. As far as questions go for this presentation, if you do have questions, we ask that you utilize the Q&A tab to ask your questions. That will allow each panelist or each subject matter expert to answer that question either on the spot, or if you want, you can hold it till the end, and then we'll allow some time at the end to go over all of those Q&A. So please use the Q&A feature. You should also see that chat feature. That is what my colleague is going to be using to kind of send some updates and share some links and resources through the chat. So just wanted to bring that to your attention to use that Q&A feature. So let's go ahead and begin with the overview of our program, the California Transition Assistance Program. Again, my name is Derek, and I'm one of the training coordinators here for CalTAP. So exactly what is it? What is our program, CalTAP? Well, it's designed to inform and connect veterans of all eras to earn state and federal benefits and provide resources as those needs change over time, because we know that not all veterans' needs are the same. So that the way that we've done that is through our pathways program, and you can see what each of those 5 pathways are. Everything from our core curriculum, which is basically Veterans Benefits 101, how to enroll in VA healthcare, how to file a disability claim for compensation, how to manage all of your personnel and service records, and then our additional pathways such as education, employment, entrepreneurship, and our Veterans Service Provider pathway. So if a veteran's transition is taking them into each one of those key areas, we've designed self-paced learning modules on our website that are very user-friendly for veterans to use to navigate each one of those resources. So we're going to show you a little bit kind of how to get started and find those as well. But I also wanted to start by sharing a screenshot of our California Veterans Resource Book. This is a great tool to keep handy kind of in your toolkit for veterans benefits. It's basically covers all of your veterans benefits from federal to state to local to county to non-governmental organizations as well. So if you don't have a hard copy of this, we definitely encourage you to find this online through our PDF version on our website, and we can share that link for you in the chat as well. And I believe we also have a QR code that you can scan as well to bring that up so that you can download and have a copy of that as well. So how to actually find us and use our program online. This is our main page through Calvet. You can see that CalTAP icon right down there on the right-hand side. And if you clicked on that, that'll bring you to each one of those pathways that I mentioned. Today, we're going to review a little bit more about the core curriculum and talk about our California specific benefits. We also wanted to show you this icon down there on the bottom to where it says archives. That is our whole series of archive webinars that we've been hosting virtually for the past, let's say almost 2 years now. So we've hosted an array of different topics through this CalTAP webinar program. Anything from housing services to mental health to education benefits. So really very topic specific. So if you have time to kind of circle back and find a topic that's relevant to you, there's probably a good chance that it's in there in our archive webinar. So really encourage you to navigate this at your leisure, and hopefully you find some information that is useful to you and possibly your family as well. So if we went to those pathways and we clicked on that core curriculum, that'll bring you all of the modules that are within core curriculum. As you can see, I kind of mentioned everything from healthcare to claims and compensation, to financial literacy resources as well. But for this morning, we kind of want to focus on that module 5, which is our California benefits. So let's go ahead and talk really quickly about what exactly those are that CalVet offers here in the state of California. Again, all of this information is in the resource book as well. Gives you kind of all of the details and black and white eligibility information for all of these programs that we're going to be speaking of. But I'm just going to do a quick overview and kind of show you some highlights of what CalVet offers. One of our main programs is our college tuition fee waiver for veterans' dependents. For service-connected disabled veterans with at least a 0% rating, your children can go to school tuition-free here in the state of California at a state or UC campus. So that's a great benefit. Also, our veterans designation on our driver's license, just to have the word veteran printed on your driver's license, so you don't have to carry around your paper DD-214s for your local discounts at your hardware stores and restaurants and all the great stuff like that. Our vehicle registration fee waiver for total and permanent disabled veterans with mobility impairment, you can actually apply to have your registration fees waived at the DMV. There are fishing and hunting license reduced fees as well through the Department of Fish and Wildlife. There's a state parks pass if you have the eligibility as well for no cost use to all of our great California state park operated systems. There's the disabled veteran property tax exemption for total and permanent disabled veterans. And the best way to apply for that is through your county assessor's office, to where you pay your property taxes from. If you have the eligibility, they will grant you a waiver for a certain amount on your property tax. Business license, tax and fees. If you wanted to sell any goods or products or services and you need to apply for a business license, you can check with your local office to see if you can have that fee waived. Our CalVet home loans, which is a great home loan program that mirrors the VA's home loan. We have a great team here of CalVet loan originators. If you're interested in home ownership throughout here in the state, highly encourage you to reach out and just talk about your options for your CalVet home loan. CalVet Women's and Minorities Veterans Division helps serve our underserved veteran community here in the state of California. They do great work. CalVet operates 8 veterans homes for long-term care here in the state of California. So if the veteran's time of need does come where they are in need of long-term care options, CalVet does operate these facilities statewide as well as our CalVet cemeteries as well. So a lot of great programs that CalVet offers. This is just kind of a real high-level overview of some of those. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can talk to you a little bit more about any one of those programs. So lastly, maybe some common websites that you maybe come across as a veteran in your transition or anywhere else for that matter. VA, of course, you can always start at va.gov and navigate their resources, anything from your healthcare needs to disability compensations, to track and manage all of the benefits that you're in receipt of, as well as records maintenance. And, you can begin applying for your education benefits, get your eligibility letters, and everything from there. So the VA is kind of in a transition with their login for their new portal. It's going to be through My VA. It's eventually going to replace e-benefits that you may be familiar with, but this is kind of a one-stop shop to log in and request all of your information, review of your benefits, apply for download any letters or specific information that you may need in relation to your VA benefits. If you receive your healthcare through the VA, My Health eVet is another good resource. That's where you can, manage all of your prescriptions, schedule your appointments, manage all of your healthcare information as well. So these are just some additional resources to share with you if you haven't come across that already. If you would like to stay connected with us and the CalTAP team and follow along with the remainder of our webinars, or just reach out to us for general support, you can always just reach out to us directly and provide a non-DoD email to our email address right there, caltap@calvet. You can register on our website through our My Calvet profile that allows you to just create a personalized profile for yourself and stay on top of all of the benefits information for you specifically. You can follow us along on our social media platforms. We've put a few QR codes there on the right-hand side to where you can follow us along on our Facebook or our Instagram. And we're also going to be sending out a webinar survey after this event. So that allows us to just kind of gauge the effectiveness of these webinars and making sure that we're presenting the most relevant and useful information to you as either a veteran, service member, or a family member here in the state of California. So I know that was quite a bit of information in a short period of time, but we encourage you to reach out to us. And I do have a few more slides to go through here as well. So I mentioned My Calvet. This is where you can go to register directly through our website and create that personalized profile. Also wanted to share a new update that our program has offered. This is our monthly newsletter, and this gets sent out every month and kind of highlights the work that the department is doing. It goes over the theme for the month. This month, of course, is emergency preparedness. And this allows you to see all of our webinars that we're going to be hosting for that month, as well as a link to register directly for each one of those webinars. So if you sign up with us and send us your email address, we'd be happy to include you on this monthly newsletter. It's a great way to just kind of stay connected with Calvet. So again, that is my name and direct contact information. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to speak to you about anything. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our local interagency network coordinator from the Inland Empire region, Merlene Steinbeck. So Merlene, if you're ready, take it away.
Thank you so much, Derek. Hi. So like Derek said, I'm the local interagency network coordinator for Calvet. My region includes the Inland Empire region, which is Inyo, San Bernardino, Riverside counties. Next slide. So I just want to take a look at the next slide, please. At the map of California. As you can tell, there are 8 of us, 8 links in the state. And our specialty is to make sure that the veterans get the resources that they need. And in each area, you could tell that the needs are different. What I mean by that is in my area, the big red region here, there is like vast different distances, which makes transportation more difficult. And as you can see in like Orange County, they may not have transportation needs, but they have a lot of community needs for children and various different things, because we have different age demographics, different jobs, income statuses, and all of us are experts in each category of veteran services. So if you need something for a veteran, let us know. Also, we advocate on behalf of the veterans as a group and also as an individual as well. So we really, really care about our veterans in our areas. And as you can tell, if my coworker calls out sick, I'm going to a different part of California to kind of help. Next slide. What we do is we provide outreach to the veterans, service members, and their families. What I mean by this is I travel throughout my region and go to different bases, installations, community colleges, anywhere I think I can find a veteran that needs assistance, and talk to them about their benefits and give them the good news of Calvet. we make referrals and work with the established service provider networks. So the networks, I would say, is more about community partnerships, especially in my area. We all seem to come together and work very well together, federal, county, and even the nonprofits. We also assist with local emergencies, like the fires we've had recently. A lot of veterans lost everything. They lost their homes. They lost their DD-214s. Where do you go? What do you do? Where do you go for temporary housing? Where do you go to get replacement documents? You'll find a link on site at Calvet that will be able to assist with this. We also provide leadership and advocacy to local communities. And what I mean by that is we go to various different community stakeholder meetings and we advocate on behalf of our veterans. So there's so many different resources out there. And what we do is we try to find a network to kind of close the gaps for the veterans. So anything that you could think of that a veteran could possibly need, furniture to go into a house. I could find Heroes Warehouse over in our Rancho Cucamonga office. There's so many different places that help fill up the house with furniture. There's so many different places out there that do different types of things that will help the veterans. If you have any questions, contact me or one of my coworkers, or if you contact me, I can get you to the correct area of California. When I say we provide leadership and advocacy, at these community stakeholder meetings, we'll have veteran roundtables, various different things. Some legislation comes from this. Various different legislators will be involved. There will be the VA secretary himself has attended some of the meetings and listened to our concerns. So having these kinds of advocacies, being able to talk and send it up our chain of command and through the federal as well is very fortunate. And I really believe that we make a very good difference in the community. And we're a great benefit to the veterans because we're accessible and we can be talked to directly, as well as email or however you contact us, we will get you to the correct place. Next slide. Some of the community stakeholders include like the EDD, like getting jobs, American Job Centers, our County Veteran Service Office. We usually have contacts in each one of them. Our Calvet offices, we can send things up the chain, talk to people in our Calvet offices. In the VA medical centers and clinics, I have contacts in my region at every single one. And the vet centers, we have contacts there as well. Next slide. So if you have any further questions or you want to talk more to me about what the links do or how I can assist you, or if you know a veteran in need that wants a referral or would like to talk about some issues they're having, have them contact me or one of my coworkers, or I could get you to the correct place. So I believe that's the end of my presentation. Derek?
Great. Thank you so much, Marlene, for the information. Much appreciated. Okay, at this time, I would like to take the honor to introduce Mr. Nick Murray, who's a Senior Emergency Services Coordinator for Cal OES. So with that, Nick, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll get right into it. This is kind of Cal OES's standard boilerplate mission. The bottom line up front is we're here to help you all in California deal with the enormous amount of disasters that we have. And don't worry, I have a slide here in a little bit that's going to show some of that. But the biggest thing is we look at all the different ways that we can help you all be as prepared as possible, and then how to manage your own disaster throughout that crisis. So next slide, please. So here's kind of a little bit of our agenda. We're going to talk about, kind of knowing your risks, a little bit about personal preparedness, everything from you as the individual to your own property. And then a couple of additional links to, go above and beyond and continue to help with those around you, your family, and the rest of the state of California. Next slide, please. So in order to really understand, how to be prepared and overall preparedness for your property, your person, and all the other things kind of in between, you first have to know your risks. We provide a portal called the My Hazards portal, and it's a great little tool. It provides a map overlay of whatever region, area, or information you put in there. So if you want to put in just your zip code, your entire address, or family members' addresses, whatever, put those in there. start searching. And what it'll do is provide you overlays of earthquakes, floods, tsunami zones, as well as wildfire areas. So a little while ago, just to make sure that the website still works, I went and dumped in my address, and I still currently am in a flood zone. But if I zoom out on that map, I can see the nearest fault line. I can see the nearest state managed area, as in, like, you know, what areas are wildfire prone, and I can see a lot of that stuff just by zooming out. So that tool is still live. It works. It's great. It provides a lot of information there to help you really understand what your hazards are. So, for example, let's talk a couple of extra hazards, right? So if you live in the more foothill areas of California, or you live up the mountain, generally your wildfire risk is going to be higher than folks that live in the valleys or closer to the coastal areas. But also, that doesn't come without other issues during the wintertime. So as we generally see, if you live in a wildfire prone hazard area and a wildfire does come through, you can reasonably expect during the wintertime and when the rains come in, that area that was previously burned is going to turn into mudslides. So you have to be aware that there are other ramifications that occur after those disasters. For those of you that live in flood-prone areas like myself, or you live in areas that are prone to tsunamis, where you just have that sudden rush of water come through the area, you know, one of the big things is you got to know where that high ground is. Are you prepared to deal with that particular hazard? Do you have flood insurance? You know, so there are lots of things there that we're going to unpack as we go through this slide deck. But the most important thing is you got to know your hazard so you know what to prepare for. And then I also provide the link for the FEMA flood check portal. So each one of these websites will help provide you that kind of comprehensive approach to what hazards affect you personally and what are within your region as well. Next slide, please. So these are our most common hazards in the state of California, right? Everything from wildfires to our more recent public safety power shutoffs. I believe almost everybody in California has had to experience some sort of power outage. And not only that, but that power outage is generally an effect of the other hazards that we have listed there. We do have volcanoes. They don't do much these days, but we have them. Tsunamis generally only affect our coastal areas and mostly our north coast persons. We do have tornadoes, not as bad as the ones they have in the Midwest. We've oftentimes seen pictures of tornadoes in Southern California that have knocked over lawn chairs and whatnot. And don't worry, we will rebuild. But those are some of the things that you have to look out for. Earthquakes, as you know, California is on multiple fault lines, and we've got them all over the state running up and down. Which is a good plug for the Cal OES / California's MyShake app, which can help provide you guys alerts on that one. But yeah, these are our typical hazards. We have a ton of other hazards that are more human caused, but I'm not really going to get into all of those. But at this point, just consider that these are your normal natural hazards in the state of California. Next slide, please. So this slide might be a little bit hard to tell. I did get it luckily updated last year, I got it updated this year all the way up to 2021 info. But it covers all 58 counties in the state of California. And what's important here is if you can see which county you reside in, that kind of gives you an idea of the last 40 years worth of disasters that we've had to affect. And a lot, as we know, wildfires are big news, but they are not as prevalent as flooding is. So if you take a look at a lot of these counties, look like, for example, Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, our Southern California counties have a lot of wildfires as opposed to flooding. But if you take a look, there may be devastating wildfires out there, but a lot of you are more prone to flooding and should be more concerned or prepared for that type of disaster than anything else. So between being really on fire or being completely soaking wet, you got to pick and choose sometimes which disaster you want to be prepared for. But this kind of gives you another way to kind of look at those hazards that we've experienced over the last 40 years. Next slide, please. So here's some additional recent disaster history. We tried to put this into as concise a point as possible. The biggest thing is, right, we've had a lot of fires, we've had drought, and we're back into another drought season. We've had earthquakes, we've had civil unrest, we've had more PSPS, the public safety power shutoffs. We've had mudslides and all sorts of things. So the thing is, the hazards aren't going away. Whether or not they're going to increase in size or decrease in size or increase in frequency or decrease really isn't up to us. It's just a matter of we're going to do our best to try to mitigate those as we can at our level, and hopefully that you guys can ride the storm or deal with the wildfire in a productive, safe manner. So we're going to do our best to help you all out at your level. Next slide, please. So let's start with a little bit of personal preparedness, right? We already talked about knowing your hazards earlier, and we talked about some of those hazards. The next thing you guys can do is sign up for alerts. The calalerts.org website puts you in touch with all 58 counties. So you just go there, go to the sign up page, select the county that you belong to, and it'll take you direct to that county alerts webpage. There are various different services that provide that. Every county is a little bit different, whether that is email, text message, Facebook, Twitter, all the different types of mediums that they use out there. But this puts you in touch with signing up with one of those counties. For example, I live in the Sacramento region. My father lives in the El Dorado County region, so I'm signed up for alerts in both my area and his, because a lot of times where he lives, they don't always have great cell service. So I try to make sure that I at least am aware of his alerts in case something happens. So it's also good to know where your relatives are, especially if they have additional needs that may be greater than yours. So just kind of keep that in mind. Next, we want you to make a plan to protect yourself and your people, as in your family, your relatives, your close loved ones, whoever it is that kind of resides with you. Make a plan to protect them. This QR code here, if you guys use your smart devices, it'll take you direct to the Cal OES Family Readiness Guide that we created a couple years ago. And that guide is about 20 pages. It walks you through all sorts of different things to better prepare your house, your family, your pets, especially. And it covers a whole bunch of information. And so the idea is print it out, fill it out, make sure it's readily accessible. It should hopefully be with wherever your Go Kit or your Stay Box is. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what items should go in there. But again, that OES Readiness Guide has that information listed there. So download it, fill it out, and use it to the best of your ability. Ultimately, the most important things are, make sure you're preparing for your family, and make sure you have a communications plan, and you know where your supplies are in case you have to shelter or evacuate, right? These are important things to know. And lastly, check on your neighbors, right? If you know you've got folks that live around you that may have a little bit more difficult time with this, try to help them out if you can, right? It's all about taking care of our own and then taking care of our folks around us. Next slide, please. So we talk about those alerts and warnings, right? I mentioned the Cal Alerts thing on the last slide, right? Sign up, do the best that you can with that. Text messaging rates do apply. Many times our first responders / emergency agencies are going to put information out through mass messaging, through text. They're going to put it out on their Facebook and their Twitter pages and all that other stuff, the other social media that are out there. So just make sure you're tapped in with those so you get the most up-to-date information. As I mentioned earlier, you can download the Early Earthquake Warning app through MyShake. That is a pretty good app. I've had a couple of alerts come through over the last couple of years being in the Sacramento region. And even as I've traveled down south for different things that we do here at OES, it will update your location, and I've received alerts for being in the LA area. So it's a great thing. It gives you at least a couple of minutes, sometimes a couple of seconds, just to kind of say, oh crap, earthquake's on its way, I need to drop cover and hold. So it gives you that at least a little bit more information, and you can make a quick decision that may be able to protect you and those around you. And lastly, make sure you know the difference between an evacuation warning and an evacuation order. We try to standardize within the state the language that all first responders use in that particular regard. It may be different county to county, but ultimately the evacuation warnings are hey, there's a disaster coming, you need to be prepared to leave. And then the evacuation order is, hey, that disaster is imminent, you have to leave now. And those are going to be usually given out through your law enforcement agencies. And they use generally similar language, but make sure you know the difference. And for those of you that have folks that may need to evacuate early, don't wait to evacuate. Get them out of there as soon as you can. Whether that means you end up going to a shelter that's managed by the county, or you go to live with a loved one that lives outside of the area that may be affected by the disaster, make sure that you try to evacuate as soon as you can if that order or if warning comes through. Next slide, please. So we talk about making that plan, right? That Cal OES Family Readiness Guide is a great tool to get you started, right? It has a communications plan built in there, so you can contact those. Make sure folks know that when you're evacuating, that they know where you're going. Gather and organize your supplies, right? Whether that's a Go Kit or a Stay Box or a Stay Bag, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you have those organized, whether that's sitting in a closet, just kind of ready to grab and go, or everybody's got a cool backpack that's got all the stuff they need. Awesome. But make sure you gather and organize it, and do that before the disaster, not during the disaster. Designate a couple of meeting places, right? Have one that's, immediately outside your home or within your neighborhood, or have one that is outside of town that you know where to go to, right? The whole idea is you designate a few places or a couple places to go in the event you become separated or you have to get out of the area quick. Especially for our folks that live in the more wildfire prone areas. Some of these more rural towns and rural cities only have a few roads in and out, right? And those can become clogged very quickly, especially if people are evacuating. So make sure you have a plan to meet in adjacent towns or outside the danger area, and make sure that you've kind of checked with your local first responders on what roads are open and available. That's why it's a really good idea to also have maps on hand, and we'll talk about that in the supply slide later. And then obviously, again, make sure you have routes. Check with your local emergency management agency, your local first responders, so you know what's going on. And lastly, don't forget your pets. One of the big things that we see a lot in disasters is folks leave their dogs or cats, they leave their horses, leave their alpacas, random animals left behind. I can tell you from experience, a couple of years ago when we had the campfire up in Paradise, somebody had left their poor hermit crab behind, and somebody was able to save it. So things like that, don't forget your pets. Next slide, please. So let's talk about documentation, right? Obviously a big one, whether that is your insurance, your homeowner's insurance, your property insurance, your DD-214s, right? Have your documentation readily available, right? Many of us folks that have served in the military are very familiar with the I Love Me books, or the brown file that we keep for ourselves, right? So you should continue to do that, right? Especially if it's going to be your DD-214s, your marriage licenses, and birth certificates. All right, keep that book handy. Keep it readily available, or at least try to keep it protected so you can grab it and go if you need it. Excuse me. The reason why you want to keep that information and paperwork handy is, especially if you lose your house to a wildfire or a flood, when you get in touch with your local disaster assistance center, they're going to need that information to help kind of get you back on your feet, whether that's through small business loans or personal loans or different things that are going to be available to you. You're going to want that documentation readily available. So again, as many of our service folks here have heard before, keep an I Love Me binder, right? Keep all that information in a good, readily accessible spot. Whether that's stored on the cloud or stored physically, however you want to do it, what's most convenient for you, but make sure you have access to it. I kind of skipped over the first one, which is photographs. Most people have photographs on their cool smart devices these days of all their loved ones, kids and stuff like that. But the one thing you want to do is, before you evacuate or before you start sheltering, make sure you take pictures of everybody in case you guys get separated, right? Include your pets in those photos too. It's one of those things where chipping is not always, for your pets is not always consistent from county to county. There's lots of things that, kind of change, right? You may not evacuate to the county that you live in. You may evacuate to a different county. So just keep in mind that you're going to want to have those pictures in case people get separated or lost. And then lastly, financial records, right? We talked a little bit about the insurance policies. Make sure you have copies of those. Any bank or tax information that may help, in the long run, keep that stuff in there, whether it's just a copy or just a piece of paper that has your account information on there ready to go. Make sure you have that on there, because I'm pretty sure most people don't remember or know the routing number to their bank, but they may know where they bank. So keep that information handy. Just, again, keep copies of it in that I Love Me binder. And be ready to take it with you just in case you have to evacuate. Next slide, please. So I've talked a little bit about supplies, right? And what are those supplies, right? Water, food, the kind of basics there. If you have little ones that, like infants, right? Make sure you have formula, diapers, soothing supplies to take care of them. Pets, don't forget pet food. That's a pretty big one we often see in the shelters, right? Everybody got everything they needed, but the pets showed up and like, oh crap, we didn't bring the pet food. So make sure you have pet food. Prescription, right? Extra copies of your prescriptions. Make sure you have that medication. That should be easily grab and go as well. Any immunization, allergy records, right? Especially if you end up in a shelter, a lot of times they don't have that information readily available. So if there's going to be certain food allergies, or you are medically dependent on certain types of medications, that's something you're going to want to make sure that you have there, because some shelters will be able to acquire those items for you. And obviously for the long term, if you don't end up getting to go back home for a couple of days, that's definitely something you're going to want to have on you as well. As far as an emergency radio, if you have to stay at home because you're sheltering in place, emergency radio is great. The information comes through, can give you lots of information there. Make sure you have extra batteries for your cell phones, or at least you have some sort of backup battery system or some way to charge in case the power goes out. We always recommend flashlights, a first aid kit, have fire extinguishers. You'd be quite surprised how many folks don't have fire extinguishers. We highly recommend them. If you don't have them, they are, relatively inexpensive, and you can get them at any, the Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, any place, Walmart as well. So try to have a couple of those on hand. Personal hygiene products, right? Kind of like, I feel like I'm talking to you guys about going to the field, right? These are some of the items you want to have in your rucksack kind of concept. Personal hygiene products to kind of get you guys through, right? You'd be quite surprised how quickly, living in the same clothes after a couple of days will start to stink. And hey, sometimes you just want to clean up a little bit, right? So have a lot of that stuff available for personal hygiene and sanitation. Whistle, air horn to signal for help. If you have to shelter in place, or as we've seen in various disasters where folks end up on the roof in the middle of a flood, that whistle or air horn is going to help, call first responders that might be floating by to come get you. Wrench or pliers to turn off utilities, right? We don't want to add to the hazard. So for example, if you're in a wildfire prone area and you have gas and utilities such as that, you're going to want to turn those off, because the last thing you want to do is have your house go up and then continue fueling the fire. Again, local maps, right? To have good information on where you can go, places and road information. You can kind of overlay a lot of that stuff there. Cash for emergency purposes. You can't always rely on your cell phones to work, especially if everybody's trying to use it or towers go down. It's always good to have cash on hand. Just something as easy as a backup payment system. And then lastly, sleeping bags and blankets, right? You never know, where you can end up sheltering. Some people don't like to shelter in the shelter. Some people like to shelter in their cars. Some people end up going to a loved one's house, and sometimes they just don't have blankets. So just be sure to have sleeping bags and blankets, readily available to kind of go with you. Like I said, if you all think of this as a packing list for going to the field, from your days of doing the active duty or the military stuff, it's kind of the same concept, right? Be ready to grab, go, and take what you need. Next slide, please. So let's get a little bit away from personal preparedness. We talk about property preparedness, right? So I've talked a lot about wildfire preparedness because that's right now kind of the hot ticket item, no pun intended. But property preparedness, right? Make sure you have or you've updated your homeowners or property insurance. And then do you have adequate coverage for fire, flood, and earthquake? I know that our folks that live up in the more rural areas are having a struggle to get fire insurance, because it's one of those things now they do it through the co-op, but it's important that you still have it. If you're in that fire prone area, there's lots of guides out there through CAL FIRE or your fire safe councils on creating that defensible space, knowing the different zones, right? Are you clearing out the underbrush? Are you getting rid of, dead growth, or are you getting rid of anything there that could continue to, fuel a fire near your home? And do you have, again, that adequate space between your house and the tree line? So all these guides are there and readily available. Lastly, again, we talked floods, tsunamis, right? Do you know where that high ground is? So just making sure that you are aware of what you can do for your property, especially if you're going to be inundated with floodwaters. Next slide, please. So we talk about that creating a defensible space, right? So that includes a couple things, right? Getting rid of the clutter of dead leaves and sticks and twigs that it may be in your gutters or on your roof. Try to maintain a 5-foot non-combustible zone. What that means is you're moving things away from the house that could be potentially flammable, right? So we don't store propane tanks right next to the house. Those are usually a little bit off. So stuff like that. Try to keep non-combustible and try to keep combustible things away from the house. We create space, between plants. We try to use those, the more water drought resistant type stuff. That's the type of plants that, we encourage or that you should have around the house. So doing things that you can to prevent dry brush or anything from being combustible around the house, right? Mow your grass, mow your lawn regularly, right? Not to say that some sergeant major from CalVet is going to come out and tell you to stay off the grass, but at the end of the day, mow the grass, right? Keep it down so it's not easily burned. Try to keep mulch away from the house. Bark does help, because it does help retain water. So there's lots of different things that you can do to kind of, protect your home from a wildfire. It's no guarantee at the end of the day, but at least it's going to prevent things from burning immediately next to the house. And last, like I said, check with your fire safe council. Every county has one, and they're going to have information that may be a little bit more specific to your region on different techniques and things that they recommend for where you live. Next slide, please. So we talk about that So around the home, right, we kind of talked about knowing your hazards, right? Especially for our folks that live close to fault lines or experience earthquakes on a regular basis. One of the things that we always mention is that brace your home. So that means, getting those earthquake straps and bracing things to the wall so to prevent, bookshelves from falling over. The other thing is, install the anti-tipping devices for your refrigerators and your large appliances. So all of those things you want to try to do around the home. Obviously we always suggest, and I know it's state law, but, install and maintain smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in your home. Check your fire extinguishers, make sure they're serviceable, right? You can always go out and buy new ones. And if you can't do that, you can always check with your local fire department on what they do to refill or recharge the ones that you may have. And then if you have the ability to, consider purchasing a backup generator, especially if you live in the areas that are always prone to PSPS. Especially when your when your when your power goes out for 3 to 4 days, and we have seen it in some areas where the power has been out for up to 8 days. It's unfortunate, but it's one of those things where consider having that backup generator just to kind of keep your food safe and keep all of your essential appliances running, so that you're not out any extra cash there. And lastly, again, know where those utility shutoffs are and how to turn them off. That's kind of an important one, especially knowing where your gas line, know where your water line is, know where your electrical inbox is. So keep all those things, in the back of your mind as something that you may need to turn off to prevent adding to the disaster. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there's a couple of things that you can do if once you've kind of taken care of yourself, your home, your community, going above and beyond. We oftentimes, as veterans, look for ways to continue to give back to our community. And then not just the veteran community, but our greater community as a whole. There's lots of things that you all can do out there, right? You can volunteer with the Red Cross. Many fire departments sponsor a community emergency response team. We highly suggest these ones because they are federally and locally funded. It gives you great training on all sorts of stuff. And then during a disaster, you do have the ability to go out and support your local community, whether that's doing light search and rescue, providing aid to injured folks, right? There's a great way to do that. We also suggest the Americorps. It's another volunteer organization that's from the federal side. We have within Cal Volunteers, our Californians for All, and that's how you can sign up there to support the COVID relief effort that's still going on. And then for those of you that may want to still serve in uniform but don't want the extra added physical fitness side of it that goes with it, you have the California State Guard. It's a military reserve force that supports the National Guard. If you have or have not heard of them, they generally wear, instead of U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army, U.S. Marine Corps, whatever on their left chest, it usually says California, and they support as an administrative function to the California State National Guard. And they also do some emergency disaster work as well. So these are a few different ways that you can kind of go above and beyond just taking care of your own. And if you want to give back to the community, here's a few different tools that can do that. Next slide, please. So here's all the links I kind of covered throughout the entire presentation. You have the Cal Alerts, My Hazards, two great ones you can start off with. For those of you that, are close to wildfire hazard areas, check out readyforwildfire.org. That's sponsored through CAL FIRE. And then you have your fire safe councils that I always suggest. And then the last couple down there, you've got FEMA's ready.gov is a federal resource that the partner that will be following me up will talk a little bit about. And then we have Listos California that sponsors numerous different preparedness tips and tools for all demographics in the state of California. And then lastly, the MyShake app, right? Quick, easy to download, and then you get alerts right away. And then if you feel shaking, you put that information on there, and it collates all that information into a nice kind of user-friendly device there. Next slide, please. So that concludes my brief. I just want to say, as one veteran to another, thank you for your service, and I hope you guys are able to be more prepared for this year's disasters that we have. And thanks for your time. Derek, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was just outstanding information all the way across the board. Really appreciate it, your time and partnership on this and sharing all of your expertise. So really, thank you again. So at this time, I would like to introduce Joe Johnson, who's the Emergency Management Specialist for the VA Northern California Healthcare System. So with that, Joe, the floor is yours if you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Derek, and I really like to. I really like to thank Nick for his presentation, because I've been doing this job now since 2007, and every time I see that presentation, I just learn more about the resources out there to assist in disasters. So thank you, Nick. And so my presentation is discussing how we at the VA at the VA med centers, how we go about dealing with wildfires and reaching out to our veterans and our program and what we do. After Nick has pointed out all the things that you do in a wildfire to prepare to evacuate. After you've been evacuated, you had to leave your house, and you had to leave at a short notice, and you forget your medications or some things you left behind, or you have some you really have to go to the doctor or anything like that. This is what the VHA does. We prepare for wildfires, we prepare for all disasters, and we have a program to reach out to vets to make sure we can continue their care. So next slide, please. So for VHA, the Veterans Health Administration, our primary goals are to take care of the vets, but we have one objective that we really stick to. It's that we help the nation prepare for disasters, and how we do that is we take actions to ensure continuity of healthcare for all of our veterans. And we'll go, this brief slide presentation will tell you how we do that. Go ahead, next slide, please. We have a program called the Comprehensive Emergency Management Program, which is run by the Office of Emergency Management. And this ensures that all VAs across the country have a consistent, standardized process to mitigate, prepare, and respond to disasters, to make sure our veterans maintain that health care when they're impacted by a event. Next slide, please. And what our main task is to reach out to veterans and vulnerable patients. So how do we do that? After, as Nick said, you prepare, you do everything you can to prepare for a disaster, but you're still evacuated. You get that mandatory evac from the local sheriff, fire department, and you have to leave your home. So what do? Once we get notice that there is a wildfire or a disaster that causes an evacuation event, we automatically go into high gear. We track that event, we chart it on the map. We look at the evacuation zones as they're ordered. We start with the city, town, and then we narrow it down to zip codes. And this year we've instituted a very aggressive GIS mapping. So we'll take each veteran, not just the vulnerable patients that are high risk, but we take all the veterans in our catchment area, as we have in our files, and we plot them on the map to see who resides in the mandatory evacuation zones, who are in the warning zones, the advisory zones, and then we activate our telephone call centers to promptly try to contact all the veterans residing in those affected areas. If we can't get a hold of the veteran himself, we'll try the family member, but we have a robust call center, and that program is even growing more, but a robust call center that will reach out to hundreds, if not thousands, of veterans impacted. Go ahead, next slide, please. So we'll reach out to all veterans, but one of our primary goals, and this has now become a VHA mandate for all med centers, is to reach out to the vulnerable patients. And who are those vulnerable patients? So they're community nursing home patients, or patients that are in local hospitals, dialysis patients, when you have to leave immediately, and the evacuation zone or the impact area also affects your local health center for dialysis. Then we jump into high gear, we identify you, and then we try to support your care. Homeless veterans, that's a big program here at the VA. So we have our outreach counselors, social workers, They keep a list of all the vulnerable homeless patients, vets, and they do their best to reach out, find them, and provide services. HBPC, home-based primary care. A lot of patients are treated in their home, and you know they have med care that goes out to their homes, nurses, social workers, and so we track all of those patients. We do make sure that each patient has an emergency response plan and are logged in with their local authorities, so that if something happens, the local sheriff or the fire department knows that we have a patient in this area and can try to respond to those patients. Patients needing oxygen, big issue. A lot of folks leave and they, you know, either their tanks are low or they leave without their oxygen tank. So we quickly jump into high gear, find those patients, and make sure our oxygen contractor supports those folks. Patients needing their CPAPs and any other devices, we try to reach out to make sure those patients, if they lost those devices, will quickly reorder and get those devices to them wherever they are located. Spinal cord injury patients, of course, high risk, our telehealth patients, and our patients that, you know, require other kind of social services, especially patients, you know, we know they're on suicide watch or they have, you know, other issues. Our social workers and professionals reach out to those patients also. The next slide, please. We just don't stop there. We also work with the local vet centers and to reach out to patients at the evacuation shelters. You know, we develop a team. We'll put a team together, mainly of social worker, primary care, pharmacists, and we'll go out to the shelters. And not only will we try to we'll take care of the veterans at the shelter, but if there's just a plain old person, civilian there that requests assistance, we'll make sure we try to hand them off appropriately to the local county support. So it's and the folks that are assigned to go out there from the VA side, they say it's such a rewarding experience. And so we're building up our cadre of folks to go out to the shelters. We also provide transportation to the nearest VA clinic from the shelters. And we just do our best to support. Like I said, we also make sure, you know, pharmacy meds are filled at the nearest pharmacy, whatever we can do to support that veteran. And for evacuated veterans not enrolled in VA healthcare, we assist with enrolling them into the healthcare system. And I think we've you know, it's trolling for vets, but you know, it's a good time to reach out and let our fellow vets know that we're here for them, and these are the services that we can provide at the medical centers. The next slide, please. And really, I just want to say that we've come a long way from the days when disaster happened and we just closed the doors and put a sign up and everybody goes home. We are mandated now. This program is gone. It's a mandatory program from VHA that we during disasters, we reach out to our veterans, we assess our veterans, and continue that care. And so, you know, as we move forward, we're going to employ more technologies, more mapping systems to make sure we can find every veteran that's in that impact zone and make sure that they have continuity of care. So that's really all I have. Real short and sweet, but just want to thank Derek and the team for allowing me to you know, present for our fellow vets in California. So thank you all. Thank you, Derek.
Outstanding, Joseph. Thank you so much for your time and information. I want to thank all of our presenters again. Just really great, valuable stuff that's so important for veterans and even non-veterans alike who may be attending this webinar, and as well as family members, and just great information to share. Definitely an important time to share all of this information. So thank you all again. So with that, we're going to just kind of allow a few moments for our Q&A portion. I think I saw a few questions that came in through the chat. Maybe those were able to be answered on the spot. But at this time, Michael, do you have anything that's open right now to go over by any chance?
Cool. All right. Yeah, we had a couple questions come through. We were able to answer them on the spot, but I do want to bring them up with the group just so that everybody has that. One of the first questions that came in was asking about calvet and how we help out surviving spouses of veterans. And we do have programs. Calvet does have programs for survivors survivor benefits. Mostly that's with our Calvet home loans program and our fee waiver. However, you can also find survivor benefits through the federal VA. They have pension plans. They also have education assistance programs as well. I did post a link to a list of those benefits that you can find on our website. They're in the questions and answers tab. So if you click on that and click on the answered section, you could find a link for survivor benefits there. And then there was a second question that came in for Nick, and it looks like he was able to answer it, but this question was asking about maps, paper maps in particular, and where you could find maps to add to your emergency bags. Nick had mentioned any gas station. He said Walmart, Camping Worlds, Amazon, but he's saying more importantly, they do exist in this digital world, so you can still find them if you're looking at the gas stations or if you're looking at Amazon. Let's see, one more question came through that says, thank you for your presentation. Any DIY for frugal suggestions for keeping your house cool? Maybe Nick, you might have a response to this, if anything.
Well, that's not necessarily my lane, but what I would suggest, my camera up and running.
Oh yeah,
there we go. Okay, cool.
Mine's off.
Okay, so I would highly suggest that you first reach out to your local utility provider. So if you're like through PG&E, SDG&E, or SoCal Electric, any one of those, I would highly suggest you reach out to them. Because eventually, they're the ones that sponsor all of like the cooling centers and the warming centers during the winter. So I would highly suggest you reach out to them first. As far as DIY/frugal things that you can do, the typical dad in me is like, well, turn off all the lights. One thing that you can do is you can adjust, your ventilation system that you do have in the house. So, like for example, close the doors to the bathrooms, only keep those open when you need it, and then shut the vents in the bathrooms as well. To keep that cool air or whatever you have kind of pumping through the house in areas that you need it. Box fans are always a great option to keep that air circulating. I know it's getting pretty hot here in the valley areas, and it's just hot in general. So anything you do to kind of keep cool, there's not much other than using the current infrastructure you have in the home. But again, I would highly suggest that you reach out to your local utility provider and kind of talk to them about what things that you can do. Many times they have different things with recommendations to reduce that kind of electrical bill or gas bill or whatever it is. But also that includes tips and tricks to help keep your house cool during the summer and warm during the winter, depending on what you have there and what you need. But yeah, there's a few things you can do. Like I said, keep the doors closed, keep the lights off, keep the fans running, and close vents to rooms that aren't being used is always a great way to kind of keep cool air pumped to the areas that you do use on a regular basis. And then the old-fashioned one is, put a bowl of ice in front of a box fan and let that kind of hit you. Old-fashioned technique, but it still works. I hopefully that answers some of the question there, but it's probably not the best one.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for that answer. These last two questions go hand in hand. Yes, this webinar is being recorded and we will be posting it on our website. I did post a link to our archive page in the chat, and I'll go ahead and post it again. But you can find that link there. We'll post the webinar along with this PowerPoint presentation. So you'll have both of those documents, or both of those files, I believe. As for having the presentation sent by email, yes, we can do that. So if you would like a copy of the presentation anytime after this event is up, feel free to email either me or Derek, Michael Cisneros or Derek Rose, and we can go ahead and send you a copy right away. If you don't do that, just be advised the PowerPoint will be posted with the recording probably in about a week or two. Usually it takes about a week, but 2 weeks just to be safe. And it looks like those are the last questions that came through. And we are at 11 o'clock, so let's go ahead and move forward. And I'm going to pass it back to Derek so that he can wind us down. So go ahead, Derek, when you're ready.
All right, thanks, Michael. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, just to feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions that you weren't able to ask throughout today. Maybe they're a little bit more personalized or just require a little bit of extra assistance. Definitely happy to reach out with you all VA, Calvet, things related. We also wanted to highlight our upcoming webinars that we're going to be hosting throughout July and August. On the 21st, we're going to host a webinar that's very similar to this one, but it's going to be talking a little bit more about just some direct assistance resources that are offered on the state or county level, and specifically in relation to maybe like veterans documents and specific things that you may need, and services that are offered, let's say, for example, at our local assistance centers. And then we're going to be hosting this same webinar on the 26th. So we encourage you to sign up and participate in each one of these, and as well as our theme for August, our webinars as well, that covers a little bit more specifically on the CalTAP side as far as our pathway program. So encourage you to register and follow along. We also want to encourage you to take the post-webinar survey for this webinar. Like I said earlier, this is really valuable information to us to make sure that we're presenting the most relevant and up-to-date information. So wanted to thank you all again for your time, for your partnership, for our guest speakers, Joe, Nick, and Merlene. Thank you all so much for your valuable resources and your expertise. Really can't thank you enough. So with that, I just want to wish everyone a good day. Thank you for your service as well. And thank you for joining us on this webinar. Hope you all stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you again down the road. So with that, I will conclude and hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Take care.